Are we on? So welcome back in our last session. And I thought to start with a meditation on fear. I think we do all experience it at different times, and it's useful to know how to deal with it instead of just getting caught up and the mind going around and around and around, and can have adverse effects on our health and, of course, our peace of mind. So let's start by sitting in a comfortable position. It's good if you can keep your back straight, but also relaxed. Make sure your shoulders are relaxed, not tight, tense. One helpful way of being more relaxed is to take a few deep breaths. So you breathe in slowly, as much as you can. Pause for a moment and then breathe out slowly. You can also exhale through your mouth. Just let the air go out slowly. I do that a couple of times and then resume normal breathing. We'll continue observing the breath flowing in and out for a few moments. Put aside other thoughts, memories, plans for the future. Just be in the present moment, right here, in the moment, right now, right in the place where you are, being aware of your body, being aware of your breath coming in and going out. And now bring to mind a fear that you have, but better not to think of your biggest fear, like maybe you're afraid of death. So don't try to take that on right away. Think of a smaller fear, like maybe being afraid of being late for work or something else going wrong in your life. And once you have thought of the fear that you would like to work on, try to avoid getting caught up in the feelings of fear and sort of mentally step back from it so that you can look at it objectively. You could even imagine your fear as another person, like a little child, and you're having a conversation. So start by asking the fear what it's all about. What exactly is it that you're afraid of? And then once you're more clear about that, what you're afraid of, ask yourself, how likely is it that that will happen? That thing you're afraid of will actually happen? Is it 100% definite that it will happen, or maybe there's just a possibility that it will happen? And if it is not definite to happen, but just might happen, then ask yourself if there are things you can do to try to prevent it from happening. And if there are things you yourself can do, or you can ask other people to do to help you, then decide to do those things. But then, even if you take those steps to try to prevent that thing from happening, it might still happen because we just never know what unforeseen circumstances might occur. So that thing might still happen. But even then, there may be things we can do to get help from others or from spiritual beings we can turn to for help so that we don't feel totally alone having to face this difficult situation all by ourselves. So think about that. Think about what you could do, how you could draw strength to be able to face this difficult situation if it does happen. And, and it's also helpful to remember that fear is another one of those mental states that come and go in the mind, like clouds that come and go in the sky. It's not something permanent, fixed, always there. And also, we all do have a certain amount of courage and confidence, the opposite states of mind to fear. And we can learn to increase our courage and our confidence. There's things we can do to build up those muscles, and things we can do to decrease or weaken our fear so that it has less strength and less prevalence in our experience. So if that makes sense to you, then you can make the determination to try to do those things, work on those things. So there was one more question that came in during the break. It was related to the question that came up earlier about teachers. So the question is it okay for me to question all the qualities of my teachers too? Because I sometimes don't feel a safe trust towards them, towards authority. So this is a really good question. And it's also kind of a complex issue. In Tibetan Buddhism, and I think also in other forms of Buddhism, there's this idea, and there are statements about having kind of absolute faith, absolute trust in your spiritual teacher, and never questioning them, never doubting them. And there's even statements like you have to see everything your teacher does as pure and perfect. And I mean, to a certain extent, that is good. It is good to have faith and devotion rather than criticalness, always finding fault. On the other hand, that can be dangerous. And in fact, the Dalai Lama often says he doesn't agree with this kind of statement of seeing everything the teacher does as pure. And apparently he started saying that a long time ago, not just recently, but decades ago, because he said this can lead to abuse. Unscrupulous teachers can take advantage of that. And that has happened, especially in the last couple of years. There have been many stories, cases of Buddhist teachers, and of course it happens in all religions, Catholicism and Islam and Judaism. And there's more and more cases of people in positions of authority, positions of power, positions where, you know, people are looking to them with great faith and great devotion, and they are behaving abusively. And then the students or the disciples, the people receiving this abuse, feel intimidated. Sometimes they try to talk to other people about what happened to them, and nobody believes them. And often, and then the teachers sometimes can continue with this kind of behavior because everybody believes they're so wonderful, so perfect. And then more and more people get abused. It's just tragic. I'm sure you know, you've heard. So yeah, this has happened in Buddhism and in all religions, and also in educational institutes and politics and the entertainment world. Many very tragic cases of this. So yes, it can happen with spiritual teachers as well. And so what I've heard and read the Dalai Lama say is that we should question our teachers. We shouldn't have this total 100% kind of devotion, but use our intelligence, use our discriminating wisdom, our discriminating intelligence. And he even points to, you know, passages in the traditional teachings that talk about that. And also he mentions the cases of great gurus of the past, you know, some of the great Indian masters, the Nalanda masters. And, you know, so there was a master who gave certain teachings or wrote certain texts, and then they had a disciple, and the disciple would write texts pointing out mistakes in their teacher's texts. And so he says, you know, look, you don't have to agree 100% with everything your teacher says. You need to use discriminating intelligence, and you know, if you find some error in what your teacher says, you still have devotion. You don't trash them, you know, but you still have faith and devotion to them and their excellent qualities. But if they make a mistake, you know, that needs to be pointed out. It's not good otherwise. And there's a story I heard from Alex Berzin. He's a longtime student of Tibetan Buddhism and translator and author of many texts. And he tells a story that once his teacher was Serko Rinpoche, really wonderful Lama, and Alex knew Tibetan, so he often worked as translator for Serko Rinpoche, translating from Tibetan into English. And he said one occasion, Serko Rinpoche was giving teachings, Alex was translating, and Serko Rinpoche said something that wasn't correct. Like it was not in accordance with the teachings. And Alex thought, anyway, he went ahead and translated what Rinpoche said, even though he had doubt that it was correct. Then later, when they were alone, he mentioned this to Serko Rinpoche. And Serko Rinpoche says, "You were right. I was wrong. You shouldn't have translated what I said." So kind of that shows that, yeah, teachers can sometimes have a slip of the tongue, even a great master like Serko Rinpoche. And and this happened to me a couple of times when I was following the master's program. So we had Tibetan teachers, Tibetan lamas teaching, and then they were translated into English. And I was helping with the transcripts, making the final edited version of the transcripts of the teachings. And there were a couple of times when the teacher said something that was contrary or even contradictory to what it says in the text. And it's just like, what do I do about this? And, should I leave it like that? And I think I made a footnote and, said, this is what the teacher said, but this is what Lama Sakata says, because I was really uncomfortable about just changing it. But then I spoke with another of my teachers, a great Lama, and I told him about that. And he said, no, you should say what's correct. And not if the teacher says something incorrect, you need to change that. So, this is a quandary we sometimes find ourselves in. One of our teachers we have great devotion to and be very knowledgeable, very excellent, but sometimes they may say something that's not correct. And so instead of saying, oh, my teacher said the sun rises in the west, so it must be true, and believe that. No, if the teacher says something like that, you politely, respectfully correct them. So that's just with regard to teachings. But then with regard to behavior, then again, the Dalai Lama says if a teacher's doing something that's contrary to the Buddha Dharma, contrary to their vows, especially if the teacher is an ordained person and they have vows, precepts that they've taken, then I think one of the things he said was, go to the teacher and talk to them and just express your concern and ask them, why, what's going on there, and see what they say. And the teacher might acknowledge that they made a mistake and apologize. On the other hand, if they get defensive, maybe angry, and accuse you in return of lying or whatever, and he says, then maybe it's time to say goodbye to that teacher. So he doesn't at all encourage people to just have this blind, unquestioning faith in a teacher's words or behavior. But he says we need to use our discriminating intelligence and also our knowledge of the Buddha's teachings, what is correct and not, and stick with that. And there's a really excellent explanation by the Dalai Lama about the whole subject of relating to teachers and how to deal with some of these tricky issues. Is there a French translation of, is it Foundation of Buddhist Practice, Volume 2? Do you know if that's translated into French? No, that's right, you would know. Only Volume 1. There's a series of books that Venerable Chodron is working on, Dalai Lama's teachings plus material from other traditions. And it's called The Library of Wisdom and Compassion. And it's published by Wisdom Publications. And let's see, so far we're up to volume 7, I think. We're still working on 8, 9, and 10. Anyway, volume 2 of that series. I think volume 1 is already translated into French. What's it called? Title? I know, but in French. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's called in English. It's Approaching the Buddhist Path is volume 1, and volume 2 is Foundation of Buddhist Practice. So in that one, volume 2 of Foundation of Buddhist Practice, those of you who can read the English can get a copy of that. There's several chapters towards the beginning of the book where the Dalai Lama is explaining this whole topic of spiritual teachers, relating to spiritual teachers. And he does it in a very balanced way, you know, that we need, yes, it's important to have respect, but at the same time, we need to have discriminating intelligence. So it is a difficult thing. I mean, I myself have had a problem with that. Some of my teachers, one in particular who, you know, I took teachings from, but then did things that were contrary to His Holiness. And it was really, really difficult for me, really painful. I finally managed to work out a solution to that. But the Dalai Lama himself talks about his own experience when he was still in Tibet, as still quite young. I think he was maybe about 16 at that time. And one of his teachers, Reting Rinpoche, I think was his name. And there was some kind of political struggle in the government, power struggle, yeah. So one of his teachers was involved in that. And there was even some violence and death that happened as a result of that struggle. And so he said it was really, really difficult. But he said, you know, even though this was his teacher, as the Dalai Lama, he had to say, this is wrong. What this teacher is doing is wrong. So he said he would, when he was sitting on his meditation cushion, doing his prayers, his practices, he would think of that teacher and have great devotion to him. But outside of that, you know, when it was necessary, he would say that behavior was wrong. But then again, it's like what you can do is blame the action. That action, that behavior is wrong, but not the person. Yeah, still have devotion to the person, but see that that action, that behavior was wrong. It's difficult to do that because we have such a tendency to, you know, combine everything. That person is wrong. That person is bad because they did that bad thing. But yeah, I mean, if you look at all the good things, all the good qualities and all the good things that that person has done, then, you know, you can maintain faith and devotion and appreciation on the basis of those. But then that could just be one thing that they did that was wrong, you know, not such a big deal. So that particular action. And also there's this teaching that, you know, they say, oh, the guru is manifesting, is showing the aspect of making a mistake. So yeah, it could be. There could be some reason why they behave that way as a teaching. Yeah. So that's how I think the Tibetans deal with it. The teacher is showing the aspect of making a mistake in order to teach us some lesson. So they think in that way to not disparage the teacher and lose devotion and so on. Yeah, so this is a very kind of tricky and sticky area. So if you do have the chance to read that explanation by His Holiness, it's very helpful. Yeah, so again, that question about an antidote to fear without a precise subject, I didn't think of any more to say about that. Anyone here have any idea? Anyone had an experience with that? general anxiety. I don't know. It could be. It could be just yeah. And I mean, it could also be something from past lives. Like according to Buddhism, this isn't the only life we've ever had. We've had lives before this. And so in past lives, we most probably had some bad experiences, some scary experiences. And some of those could carry over into this life. And so it's like we don't understand why we have this fear. I mean, phobias are kind of like that, you know. Some people have phobias of things that they don't understand why they have this fear of that particular object, but it could be related to past lives. I met a woman who told me that she had this fear of dogs, and it was like irrational because she'd never had any bad experience with a dog. And you know, like even little tiny dogs, you know, aren't very dangerous at all, but she was just terrified of dogs. And she went to a therapist and had past life therapy, in which she remembered in a previous life being attacked, maybe even killed by a dog. And so that helped her understand why she had that fear, where that fear came from. And she was able to be free of it. So that's one possible reason for having fear and not knowing why, where it's coming from. It could be related to past lives. So you could perhaps look for a past life therapist that could help you to understand that fear. There's one well-known American, I think he's a psychiatrist, Brian Weiss, and he didn't believe in past lives. I mean, he thought past life reincarnation was just a lot of rubbish. But then some of his patients, well, one particular patient, because he would use hypnosis sometimes in his work. And while one of his patients was under hypnosis, she started talking about past lives. And he's like, oh yeah, you know, I didn't believe it until she started talking about things about him that he never talked with to her. Like she would have no way of knowing those things. Like one was, there was a child, he and his wife had a child, and this baby had some awful disease and it died before it was 1 year old. And she spoke about that baby. And he was like, how did you know this? I never told you. And there's no way that you could have found that out. So that started opening up his mind to the possibility. And eventually more and more patients would talk about past lives, and he became a believer and wrote books. There's books. One of his books I read, it's full of stories, cases of patients of his that he treated. And by remembering some previous life, they were able to understand the cause of a present problem and be relieved of it. Just one story I remember was quite interesting. There was this man, he was a pilot. I think he flew cargo planes, not passenger planes. And he had this habit that he didn't understand, but it's, you know, he'd sit in the pilot seat and start up the engine, and he would look out the window on the right side and look at the wing. And he didn't know why he did that. It was just an automatic thing that he did. And the reason that he came for therapy was because he had a lot of anger. He just like this irrational anger that he wanted to manage. And when he was, so he was hypnotized and under hypnosis, he remembered a probably immediately previous life in which he was a pilot in the German army. And during the Second World War, and he was up in the air, and his plane was shot down by friendly fire. So that's a funny term. It means, you know, his own comrades, German army shot his plane down, and it hit the right wing. The right wing got destroyed. And as the plane, he remembered the plane going down, he was so angry. So that explains his anger. And also this habit of checking the right wing to see if it was okay or not. So anyway, that's one story that stood in my mind, quite interesting. So it does illustrate that things that happened to us in past life can carry over into this life. So we can sometimes have irrational feelings or behaviors or whatever that we can't explain by circumstances in this life, but it could be related to a past life. And I think phobias, I think that probably explains phobias. So I want to talk about jealousy. So this is another disturbing emotion. I'm sure everybody feels it sometimes. Jealousy or envy. In English, we have two words, probably in French as well, and they can be sometimes used interchangeably. And this kind of emotion can come up in relationships. You know, you have a partner or a friend or a spiritual teacher, and you want that person's attention as much as possible, and then you can feel jealous if that person is giving attention to somebody else. So that's very painful. But in other circumstances, envy, or maybe not, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't say jealous, but like somebody's wealth or talents, knowledge, skills. So it's always related to another person. We see somebody, and whether it's true or not, we feel they have something we don't have, or they have more than what we have, and we want that. So it's a combination of attachment and hatred. There's attachment, grasping at what somebody else has, and hatred, a feeling of, I can't stand it, I can't bear it, that they have that and I don't. So it's kind of particularly painful. And if we're not careful, it can lead to really awful things, even murder or stealing, or, you know, just being nasty and abusive to the person you're jealous of. So the antidote to this state of mind is the complete opposite state of mind, which is called rejoicing. So rejoicing means, or another term that sometimes uses, sympathetic joy or empathetic joy. It's one of the four measurables. So this is feeling happy for the other person, happy that they have this nice thing, they have this nice quality or talent or ability, they're doing well, happy for them rather than angry and hateful. So we do sometimes feel that way. I'm sure we can all remember times when we did feel joyful about somebody else's success, especially like if you're a parent and your children have some nice experience. You want them to be happy. You love them. You want them to be happy. So they come home from school and tell you about some wonderful thing that happened, or they got a good grade on their report card, or they won a prize or whatever. And they're so happy, and you feel happy too. So you share in the other person's happiness. And when people get married, if, you know, again, it's a family member or a dear friend, and that person is getting married and they are so happy, and you feel happy too, because you want that person to be happy. And so when they are happy, you feel happy for them. So we can all find cases in our life where we did have that feeling, that experience of rejoicing or being joyful of someone else's happiness. So it is an experience we know. And we can increase that feeling. We can cultivate that feeling so that we have it more and more. And like I said, it's one of the 4 immeasurable thoughts, like the prayer that we said at the beginning. And so, yeah, we can meditate, do a meditation, and deliberately cultivate this state of mind. Or we can just do it on the spot. When you see somebody happy, children are playing in the playground and think, oh, I'm so happy that they are happy. Or we see some people getting married, even if they're not anybody we know, we can still feel happy for them. And also in the spiritual context, because jealousy can come up in a spiritual community, spiritual center, Dharma center. I could already mention, if the teacher is giving attention to somebody else, or somebody else is kind of getting closer to the teacher, then jealousy can come up. Or you might be jealous because another person seems to be able to meditate better than you, or they're quicker to understand the teachings. They ask really good questions and you can't even think of a question to ask. And so there could be all kinds of things that could happen in a Dharma or a spiritual community where jealousy could arise. So be on the lookout for it. Try to notice it when it's there, and know that it is an unhealthy state of mind. I mean, just looking at how you feel, how it makes you feel when it's there in the mind, it's kind of obvious that it's ugly and painful and not virtuous and a source of joy, a source of happiness. So kind of make a study of envy and jealousy so that you do recognize that it is negative. It is an affliction. It is something to work on, to overcome rather than perpetuate. And like I say, the antidote is the opposite state of mind: happy, feeling happy for the other person. And if we're in the throes of jealousy, feeling jealousy, it's very hard at that moment in time to transform our mind and feel happy. But it's worth a try. You could just say to yourself, I'm really happy for that person. How wonderful, how great it is that they can sit and meditate so well, that they're so smart, that they're close to the teacher, whatever it is. Just try to say that to yourself, even if it's not how you really feel. So again, that idea of fake it until you make it. Try to generate that state of mind. And you'll probably notice if you keep doing that, just saying that to yourself, it does make you feel better. It feels like the right thing to do, even if it's not 100% from your heart, but it just feels like, that's a more appropriate, more positive, a more virtuous state of mind. And so if you keep doing it, gradually it does become genuine. You'll start to really feel it. I just read something about this recently. There's a book called How to Be Sick by Toni Bernhardt. There's a meditator, and she got this illness, some kind of mysterious illness that never went away. And at the time of writing the book, I think she'd been ill for 20 years. And it totally changed her life. She had to give up her career. And she was still married and her husband stayed with her, but she wasn't able to do things with her husband like they used to do. They couldn't even go out to dinner because she was so exhausted all the time and in pain. So she spent most of her time in bed with a lot of suffering. But she used what she learned about Dharma, about mindfulness and thought transformation and so on, used those methods to deal with her illness. And then she shared in this book. So yeah, she talked about jealousy because like her husband could go out with their granddaughter and do all these wonderful things. And she really wanted to be with them, wanted to go with them too, but she couldn't because she was too sick. So jealousy would come up in her mind. And of course she didn't like feeling that way. I mean, they were her loved ones, they were her family. So she would try to do rejoicing. And it wasn't easy, but she would make herself say that to herself. I am really happy for them. I'm very happy that they are, doing these wonderful things, even though I'm lying here in bed sick. So yeah, she said initially it was not easy and it didn't feel genuine, but she would keep doing it. And eventually it became genuine. She really was able to feel happy for them. And it's so obvious to our mind that this is a much nicer, much better way to think and feel than jealousy. And so, the way I think of it is the mind wants to be happy. The mind wants happiness. It gravitates to happiness. So when you discover something that does make you happy, as opposed to this other state of mind that's so yuck, painful, then kind of naturally the mind will want to go in that direction. So it's worth trying to think that way, feel that way, even if it's just saying the words to yourself that don't feel 100% genuine. It will eventually become your way of thinking and way of feeling. And some other things that can help to decrease jealousy and envy is contentment. Learning to be content with what you have. Sometimes we take things for granted. We have a lot. We have a lot of things. We have a lot of talents and qualities and abilities. And sometimes we kind of ignore those and are looking out there at what other people have. And then we feel dissatisfied with what we do have. So yeah, learning to be happy with yourself, with what you have in terms of material things, also your knowledge, your abilities, appreciate and feel grateful for the things that you do have. We have this expression in English, count your blessings. That's really helpful. So it is helpful to, look at the things you have and feel good about those. And then try to generate this feeling of happiness for what others have. And also another thing that I found, because I feel jealous sometimes. So when I notice myself feeling jealous of somebody else, then I would ask myself, okay, so what if you did have what that other person had? Would you really be happy? And thinking about that, I thought, yeah, I probably would for a while. But then, if I have this tendency to be dissatisfied with what I have and jealous of what somebody else had, then sooner or later, I'd probably notice somebody else who has even more. And then I would feel dissatisfied. Once again, it's like a cycle. I'd feel, oh, I don't have enough. It's not good enough. I want what that person has. Like that saying of the grass is always greener on the other side, Seems to be a human tendency to look at others and make comparisons with others and what they have and what they can do and what their body is like and what their mind is like. It's just kind of an automatic thing that we do. And so, yeah, inevitably we'll just keep finding more and more people that have things that we don't have and can do things that we can't do. And so it's like there's no end. You'll never find satisfaction and contentment if you keep following that tendency. So I found that really helpful, just to realize that, that even if I have what others have, I probably wouldn't be truly happy. So the best way to be happy is be content. What one teacher was saying, we should be content with everything except Dharma, something like that. I don't remember the exact words, but when it comes to Dharma, like our knowledge of Dharma and our practice of Dharma, we shouldn't be content. We should strive to do more, like learn more, practice more. I mean, our goal, our kind of ultimate goal in the Dharma is enlightenment, becoming enlightened. So we shouldn't stop learning, increasing our knowledge and increasing our practice until we reach that goal. So there's different kinds of contentment. But even then, even with our Dharma practice, we need to do it in a balanced way, because it's still possible we could be influenced by jealousy. If there's somebody who knows more than we do, and then we push ourselves, I have to know as much as that person. And that may not be so healthy. I mean, it's good to have the wish, the aspiration to know more and do more in terms of practice. But we also have to recognize our limitations. Some people just have really amazing minds, and they're able to learn things, and they can learn Tibetan and Sanskrit and Pali and translate all these texts and be interpreters and, have this amazing knowledge. Well, they probably created the cause for that in past lives. They're reaping the result in this life of things they did in past lives. And maybe we just didn't do all those things. We don't have the karma. We don't have the ability to do what they are doing. And so it's good to have admiration and respect and rejoicing in what that person is doing and is able to do. But we have to be realistic about our own abilities and check, can I do that? Is that really something I can do? Or is it beyond my ability? And the same with, retreats. There's people who go into retreats for years at a time and do very well in their practice and even get realizations. But it's good to try to do those practices and get those realizations. But we may not have the sufficient merit, merit, the karma, to be able to achieve the same kind of results that person does. And we might end up just burning out or getting along. So we need to do things in a balanced way, have the aspiration, the wish to learn more, to do more, to progress along the path, but not in the sense of, comparing ourselves with somebody else and trying to accomplish what they have accomplished or even more than they've accomplished. It shouldn't be like a race. The path to enlightenment, the spiritual practice should be like a race, a competition. So we do need to be kind to ourselves, be in touch with our abilities, what we can do, what we can't do, and be content. Be content with doing what we can do. And another thing that can help with jealousy or envy is to think about karma. Because according to Buddhism, what we experience in this life, or what anybody experiences in this life, is the result of karma created in the past. So if someone is doing really well, they're intelligent, they have a lot of abilities, or they're very wealthy, or whatever, more than we have, then that's because they created the cause. They created the right actions, karma, to have those experiences. And that may have been done in the past life, but also in this life. Sometimes people just work really hard. They do a lot to get where they are. So, and if we don't have as much as they have, then it's because we didn't create that cause. We didn't create the karmic cause to have it. So thinking in terms of karma can help explain why somebody has more or is better than oneself. And then that can also help us realize the importance of practicing rejoicing rather than jealousy. Because if we let ourselves get caught up in jealousy or envy, that's a negative state of mind. And what kind of karma are we creating with jealousy, with envy? Is it good karma? Is it karma that's going to get us good results in the future? No, it's not. It's negative. And so the karma we create with jealousy is going to bring more problems, more suffering in the future, rather than going in the direction we wish to go. On the other hand, rejoicing, feeling joy and rejoicing, feeling happy for others' success, that's virtuous. That's a positive state of mind. So that means we're creating good karma, and there's a greater chance of achieving our wishes, doing better in the future. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's something I find helpful, just to think there are reasons, there are causes and conditions for why there's this disparity between what people have and their abilities and so forth. And it's karma. So if we want to do better in the future, have more qualities and so on, we need to create the right causes, the karmic causes. Okay, so that's a little bit about envy or jealousy. So there's one more thing I thought to talk about, and that is depression. And this is, again, not something you find in the traditional Buddhist lists of afflictive emotions, but it's very, very common in the West. Many, many people suffer from depression. And I'm not a psychologist or a doctor or a psychiatrist, so, I can't talk about it in a clinical way. And I guess there are different kinds of depression. So if you do have like clinical depression, then you may need to receive help from therapist, maybe even take medication. So there's some people in Buddhism who tend to think, you don't need doctors, you don't need medicine. Everything can be cured with meditation. Just meditate. Everything will be okay. That's not true. I've seen cases of that. Sometimes people get worse, not better. Yeah. So if there is, serious mental illness, meditation may not be the answer, and it may actually increase the problem rather than decrease it. So in some cases, it is important to seek medical help, therapeutic help. But what I'll be talking about here is more mild kind of depression, like just feeling unhappy or feeling negative about yourself. So I have experience with depression, and that is how it is with me. It's like just feeling negative about myself, worthless, and also about life. Sometimes it can extend to your whole life, to the world, everything is just, no real happiness anywhere, nothing really positive anywhere. Everything's gray and dark. And so it's just a lot of those kinds of thoughts, very negative thoughts. So one thing that helps is again, like we did with fear, to step back from what your mind is saying and look at those statements. What kind of, the thoughts involved in depression? What are they actually saying? And then do a reality check to see if they're true or not. So, for example, some thoughts that might come up would be, I'm worthless. I can't do anything right. I always make mistakes. I don't have any good qualities. Nobody loves me. Those are just examples of the kind of thoughts that might be going on in the mind. Of course, if there's this voice in your head saying those things, you're not going to be happy. It's very hard to be happy listening to that kind of voice. But is it true? Are those things true? If we're really honest with ourselves. For example, nobody loves me. Come on. I'm sure there are people who love you. Probably your mom. Mothers always, well, I don't know about always, but probably 99.99% of the time, mothers love their kids no matter what they do. So if you look carefully and honestly, for sure you'll find at least one person who loves you. And there's probably more people who really do love you, who see you as valuable and lovable and having good qualities. So that one should be easy to dispel. And Buddha loves you. I mean, those of us who are Buddhists, there's Buddha, lots of Buddhas, in fact, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and they love everybody. They love Putin and Hitler and all the terrorists, and there's nobody they don't love. So there are beings who love you. And then I can't do anything right. I always make mistakes. I'm worthless. I'm useless. Come on. If you look carefully, you can probably make a list of things that you have done well. Maybe not as great as what other people are doing, but you did accomplish things. You are able to do things. Washing the dishes, cooking a meal, cleaning a toilet. Yeah. Those are worthwhile things. Those are important things. Nobody cleans the toilet. It's pretty awful. So we all have abilities. We all have things that we can do. So again, it could be a question of comparing with others and feeling, oh, I'm not as good as that person. That person can do this and I can do that. So we need to look at ourselves realistically and recognize our talents, our abilities, our accomplishments. They are there, but we might just be ignoring them or belittling them, disparaging them. So it is important to appreciate what we can do and feel good about ourselves for those things. So those are just some examples of how we can look at our thoughts, the thoughts that are going on when we feel depressed, and recognize that they're not realistic. And also in Lamrim, Stages of the Path to Enlightenment, there's this meditation we call Precious Human Life or Precious Human Rebirth, based on teachings that the Buddha gave, where he said, being born as a human being is really, really wonderful, precious, especially if you have the chance to learn the Dharma, to meet the Buddha's teachings. So the basic idea is every sentient being is precious, in fact. Every sentient being has Buddha nature, the potential to become enlightened. Every sentient being will become enlightened one day. So we all have that potential. And most beings, like animals and so on, they're not in the right situation, the right condition to be able to recognize their potential and then develop it. They can't, even if, we try sometimes. We have animals in the room when we have Dharma teachings, but they don't understand the Dharma. They usually fall asleep or they get into fights with each other or whatever. So yeah, as an animal, you just don't have the mental capacity to understand the Dharma teachings. You try to teach a cat to not kill. You can talk to them 24 hours a day. Don't kill, don't kill. It's bad karma. That being wants to be happy too. They don't understand. They can't practice. Even that simple Dharma practice of giving up killing, they can't do it. They can't understand it and practice it. So as human beings, we have this incredible intelligence. The Dalai Lama always talks about that human intelligence, what we can do with our human intelligence. So yeah, we have amazing ability to use our intelligence in ways that are beneficial for ourselves and others in the world. We can learn the Dharma, we can practice the Dharma. So anyway, that's just the basic idea of that meditation. And that's a really good antidote for depression. Yeah, because you're looking at your what you have in your life as a human being, and especially with the chance to learn and practice the Dharma, and what you can do with your life. So if you do it well, you end up feeling really energized, really positive and confident and energized to use your life in a way that's beneficial and meaningful. That's a good meditation to do to overcome depression. And then, yeah, like the other thing I've talked about before, that those thoughts, those kind of self-critical thoughts that cause you to feel depressed, those are temporary, transitory. They are like clouds in the sky, not permanent. So understanding that is really helpful. Then you don't have to buy into them. You don't have to believe in them. You do have a choice. You can say, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to believe in you. I'm going to, think positively instead. And yeah, just don't identify with them. So some of the things I talked about before can be applied to depression. And also altruism. The more depression usually is quite self-centered, self-absorbed. It's all about me, poor me, my faults, my limitations, my this, my that, my mistakes. So it's so much about me. So the more we train ourselves to think about others, focus on others with compassion and love and altruism, wanting to benefit others and doing things to benefit others, that's very uplifting. In fact, they say that helping others, doing volunteer work, service work, causes endorphins to be released in your system, and they make you feel good. I mean, there's physiological basis for feeling good by acts of kindness and helping others. And you can definitely experience it. You do feel good, but it's also related to the body's chemistry. And so, yeah, the more we can cultivate those kinds of thoughts and feelings, caring about others, doing things for others, there's so many ways we can help others, in wherever you live. There's probably organizations where you can volunteer, even if it's just stuffing envelopes, licking stamps, serving food to homeless people. It's, just find some way of interacting with others in a helpful way. It's being helpful to others. You definitely feel better about yourself, not depressed. And I've also heard that physical things like, physical exercise is also helpful. That also causes more endorphins in your system. So you'll feel better. Do some physical exercise, work, clean your house, go for a walk, go for a run, go to the gym. There's always something you can do physically, even during the pandemic. I think people found all kinds of creative ways to do physical activity, even if the gyms were closed. So those are some things, kind of practical things that can help to alleviate depression. But again, you know, if the depression is serious, and if maybe you try meditating, but you're not able to handle the depression, and maybe it increases, you know, you find more negative thoughts coming up in your mind and you feel overwhelmed by them, then seek help. So there's people you can turn to for help. Again, spiritual teachers, therapists, and so on. So those are things that I have to share about depression. So I've pretty much covered most of the common afflictive emotions, disturbing emotions. It's just a little bit of time left. If there's any questions. Buddha, do you have a question? He knows it all. He's got it all figured out. Oh, yeah, there was, yesterday somebody asked about a bibliography. I did put together a partial list of books I know of that have information about how to work with disturbing emotions. So there's a copy here in English, which I can leave somewhere for Yang-Chen to look at and anyone else. And I did send a copy to Arnaud, and he did investigate which of these books are in French. And he made a list of, not all of them were translated into French, but some are. So that can be shared with people in France.
So I shared it on the chat.
Okay.
For people online.
No more questions? I don't know what that means. Does that mean everything was crystal clear, or?
I guess so. No, that was definitely very helpful.
I usually I'm bombarded with questions about these topics because people come up with these different scenarios. What about this? And what about that? So it's a huge topic, working with emotions. So I think it's easily a lifetime work, and more than a life. I mean, the Buddha spent many, many, many lifetimes working on his mind to overcome the negative emotions, the afflictive emotions, and afflictive states of mind, and develop the positive ones. So yeah, it's a lot of work to bring about this transformation of the mind. But my own experience is you can see results. You don't have to wait really, really long time, but you can see results if you do try working on the mind and increasing compassion, love, altruism, and these positive emotions. You can see them starting to increase, and you can see the others decreasing, but they're still there, and they're going to be there for a while. And one thing that can happen is that when we do start to become more aware of our mind, it may seem as if our afflictive emotions are increasing, rather than decreasing. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just we're becoming more aware of them. They were probably always there, but we didn't notice them. But then, the Buddha's teachings are getting us to notice them. And so sometimes, like during teachings, you find yourself squirming because the teacher's talking about something that is going on in your mind. And maybe always, you kind of knew it was there, but you could overlook it and kind of ignore it and pretend it wasn't there. But now the teacher's talking about it. And it's like, oh, yeah. So if you ask yourself, is this the first time this has ever happened in my mind? You'll probably have to accept, no, it was there before, but I just didn't pay attention to it, and I hoped it would go away, or I just didn't really notice it or identify it. So that can happen. And another thing that can happen too is we might, a particular disturbing emotion may have been there, but it was really, really deep. So we didn't notice it at all. And then at a certain point, it becomes more manifest, and then we notice it. So it probably was there before, but at a much deeper level, such that we didn't notice it. So don't be surprised if that happens. Don't think, this is something brand new happening in my mind that never happened before. It probably was there before, maybe not in this life, but in past lives. And maybe you just didn't meet with the circumstances to cause it to manifest.
Venerable, because you opened the door for questions, I got 2 more, but maybe there are also at the Abbey.
Okay, maybe we take one here and then one there, and then, yeah.
I think that because our world, we can pretty much get everything we want pretty quickly. I think that fortitude plays a huge piece. Like I tie this into the fortitude of practicing the Dharma, because wanting results when we're working on something like an old emotion is like setting ourselves up for failure. So I think that part of the antidotes here, with all the kindness, acceptance, and empathy, is to really be in it for the long haul. And that fortitude is so much a part of giving us the kind of the internal strength to be able to go through this over and over and over again. I think that our immediate gratification experience in life right now, we have to kind of put the Dharma and working on our emotions in a totally different kind of time frame. Even though we see the improvement over time, it's really the fortitude that I find helpful.
And somebody told me once something they heard from a therapist. This is a Western therapist, that was something like, the mind is quick, the heart is slow to follow. And I thought, yeah, like intellectually up here, we can understand, oh yeah, these disturbing emotions are really negative, they're really harmful, I really want to stop having them. But when it comes to our heart, meaning, that's where they're actually happening, that takes time to change. And the Tibetans say this too. Tibetan lamas say this, that they have this wonderful saying, generating positive states of mind is like pushing a boulder up a hill, but having negative states of mind is like rolling a boulder down a hill. Yeah, so it does take a lot of effort to generate, kindness and compassion and patience and so on. But when it comes to getting angry, immediately, no effort involved. No, you don't have to try to generate that. So that, hearing that from the Tibetan lamas who've had the Dharma in their culture for 1,200 years, at least. So they know, they have plenty of experience, and they know it takes time. And so Lama Yeshe used to laugh at us, and he'd say, oh, you Western people, you have instant coffee and instant, money out of the ATM machine, and instant dinners on a microwave. And so you think instant enlightenment, instant, results from your practice. Not like that. Yeah, it takes time. Okay, so then let's see how to manage expectations regarding one's practice. Well, that's what we're just talking about. Yeah, we need a balance, and it takes time to learn how to do this. We need to have energy and in a consistent way. Another thing I love from the Tibetans, they say the way of practicing, doing your practice, should be like the way that an elephant walks. We probably don't have too many chances to see elephants, but they walk kind of slowly, but they can go a long way at that same speed. They can walk all day. And on the other hand, we shouldn't be like a rabbit. And rabbits, they kind of walk, they run really fast, they stop, and then they run another way really fast, stop. So they're kind of all over the place. And so we shouldn't be like that in our practice. Like sometimes we have the spurts of energy and we practice a lot and then we get exhausted and then we don't practice for a couple of months. So we shouldn't be like that. Instead, we should be like the elephant and just slow and consistent. Keep doing your practice a little bit, at least a little bit every day. Lama Yeshe sometimes said, even just 5 minutes of meditation is good. You can do more, better, but even just 5 minutes of practice every day, slowly and consistently and regularly, and just keep going, then you'll get results. And try not to have expectations. That's another thing Lama Yeshe used to say. Don't have any expectations. People sometimes meditate thinking they're going to get some vision, or they're going to learn to fly, or have all these fantastic experiences. That's not the point. One of the other things I love, Lama Yeshe said, the way to know if your practice is going well, if you're doing it right and it's going in the right direction, is to observe your way of behaving with other people, how you feel with others. Are you more kind? Are you more compassionate? Are you more considerate? Less harmful, less selfish? If that's happening, your practice is going well. On the other hand, if you're more impatient, more angry, more hurtful, having more problems with people, you're doing something wrong. So that shows that the real purpose of practice is improving ourself as a human being, improving our character and our relationships with others, and not getting these fantastic experiences.
Do you have any advice about how to incorporate meditating on impermanence throughout the day, or just in a daily way?
I'm not very good at that. They say you should try to keep in mind your meditation objects, meditation subjects during the day, but I usually forget. I get so caught up in things. But there's plenty of opportunities during the day to notice impermanence, like with nature, with people, to notice the changes have happened since yesterday or this morning. So these are all like signs of impermanence. So it just depends on your ability and your focus, your mindfulness, your ability to remember that. But there are opportunities. But you could also, have little symbols or signs of impermanence, sayings on your wall or on your computer, or pictures, a little skeleton. I was seeing somebody had this little toy skeleton on their desk. So that's a pretty graphic reminder of impermanence. That's going to be me one day. So yeah, you can be creative and find what works for you. Okay, there's one last question about attachment and the need to feel recognized. Where does that where does the line fall between the attachment to success and recognition, and on the other side, the desire to improve ourselves, rising in our career, become more professional in our job, basically everything that pushes us forward? Well, what pops into my mind is it's good to look at why you have this wish to improve yourself, rise in your career, become more professional, and so on. What is your reason? There's probably some expectations there. So look at those. And if it's selfish, if it's all about me and what I'm going to get out of all of this, then that's a recipe for disaster, for unhappiness rather than happiness. So even if you make a lot of money, you become a billionaire and you're very successful and famous, but it's going to be hollow. It's going to be empty because you're just thinking about yourself. On the other hand, if your wish to improve yourself, advance in your career and so on, is to be of greater benefit to others and to the world, then that's more meaningful. And if you are successful in achieving those things, then there will be a sense of genuine accomplishment and happiness rather than this hollow, empty kind of feeling. So again, altruism, just trying to bring altruism into your attitude, whether it's in the Dharma or in your career. Think of how to be more beneficial to others, how to use your life, your talents, your skills, your job to help others. That'll be much more satisfying, much more meaningful, much more a source of happiness. And it will reduce attachment as well, because attachment is really about me. It's all about what I'm going to get, what's going to be good for me. Whereas altruism is about others. So that's just brief, but what comes to my mind? We do need to end. We just got 2 minutes left. So I hope this has been helpful.
Yes, thank you so much, Venerable.
So let's conclude with the dedication. We can feel rejoicing in what we have done, spending this time with a good motivation, an altruistic motivation to learn more about the mind and how to increase positive qualities of the mind, decrease the negative, disturbing ones like anger and so on. So this has been a really worthwhile thing to do, a good way to spend our time. And we've definitely created some good energy, merit, we call it positive potential. And that's the source of happiness and spiritual growth, good experiences in the future. So we can share that with others, wishing that it will benefit them as well, benefit them to have fewer disturbing emotions like anger and more positive ones like love and compassion, and help all of us get closer to enlightenment. May we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May the born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And also dedicate to the long lives of our precious spiritual teachers, especially His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all the resident teachers and all the various Buddhist centers and monasteries, and all teachers everywhere who are definitely teaching the path to enlightenment, helping sentient beings get on that path and get closer to enlightenment. So may all those teachers be healthy and live long lives and continue benefiting us with the Dharma. Thank you. Bye. Au revoir.